I never thought I'd come back to Glacier Peak. Not after everything that happened the first time I worked here. Not after the night that ended the life I thought I'd have. But grief is a strange compass. It doesn't point north or south. It just points back to wherever you left the parts of yourself you weren't ready to bury. And somehow, all my pieces led me straight to these mountains. I arrived in early June, the air still holding on to the last bite of snowmelt, the parking lots only half open, and the higher trails still closed for the season. The ranger station looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was memory shrinking things to manageable size. But as I pulled up, all I could think was how quiet it was. Glacier Peak has its own kind of silence, the kind that feels like it's waiting for you to say or do something it can answer to. And that silence greeted me like an old friend I wasn't sure I wanted to see. The only person outside was a man leaning against the railing, broad-shouldered, his hat tilted low enough that I couldn't see his eyes. He looked up when he heard my car door shut. His face was weathered, sun-browned, older than mine, but not by much. He gave a small nod, the kind that rangers give each other when words aren't necessary yet. "You must be Hall," he said. "I'm Kincaid. Sergeant around here for whatever that's worth." His handshake was firm, but his expression held something curious in it, like he was trying to place me in some mental list he kept of who should and shouldn't have returned to this mountain. "Good to meet you," I said. "Thanks for taking me back on such short notice." Kincaid shrugged. "This place eats through rangers. Not many apply twice. Figured there's a reason you wanted back in. Didn't ask. Won't ask unless you tell me." That was Glacier Peak hospitality in a nutshell. You're welcome here, as long as you're not expecting comfort. Inside, the station hadn't changed. Same laminated maps on the walls. Same bulletin board cluttered with wildlife sightings and missing gear reports. Same faint smell of wet wool and pine sap. But there was something new on the table. A plastic binder with a brown cover, thicker than any trail manual I remembered. Kincaid tapped it lightly. Rules, regulations, protocols. Most of it's the usual crap. Some of it is specific to Glacier Peak. He paused, watching my reaction. "Things get weird up here at night," he added. "Always have, always will. Those protocols keep us alive. I'll run you through it later." I flipped the binder open and saw the first page labeled Trail Designation, Avoid After Sunset. There were 10 trail names listed, all familiar, but next to each was a short note, almost clinical in tone. Do not enter after 2100 hours. Radio check-ins every 15 minutes, if crossed during emergency. If you hear calling, do not respond. Maintain line of sight with partner at all times. If visibility is compromised, retreat immediately. I traced one finger over the name I remembered too well, Hollow Ridge. My chest tightened. Kincaid watched me carefully. "You've been on that one before?" "Yeah," I said, "a long time ago." "Then you know." I didn't reply, mostly because I wasn't sure how much I knew anymore. I only knew how much I wanted to forget. Training that afternoon was mostly a refresher. Radio call signs, wildlife protocols, fire scouting procedures, avalanche zone markers. Glacier Peak is unpredictable in the daytime, violently alive in the evenings, and disturbingly silent after midnight. Every ranger learns that rhythm. Some don't survive it. When we went over after-hours rules, Kincaid's tone shifted. He stood a little straighter, his voice lowered. He wasn't reading from any manual now. "When the sun goes down, you stay on approved trails only," he said. "You hear anything that sounds human? Ignore it. Don't whistle back if something whistles first. Don't shine your light uphill if you hear movement above tree line. And if you ever see someone standing off trail after dark, don't call out. Just radio in. Understood?" I nodded. "What happens if you call out?" He didn't answer right away. His jaw flexed. "Just don't." It wasn't the kind of warning that invites questions. My first shift was uneventful, just like they always want your first shift to be. I checked campsites, logged trail reports, directed a couple of tourists who had apparently mistaken Glacier Peak for some kind of petting zoo. People come up here thinking the wilderness is entertainment. It isn't. It's older than us, and it doesn't care about the stories we tell to make ourselves feel safe. But the stillness was nice. Safe, even. Too safe. Around dusk, a cold wind rolled down from the upper basin, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Birds went silent. The sky turned the purple-blue shade that looks like bruised glass. My radio crackled. "Hall, you near Pinewater Loop?" "About a mile east," I replied. "Swing by. Got a camper reporting something strange." "Strange how?" "Wouldn't say on the radio, just go check." I hiked up the switchback and saw a middle-aged man pacing near a smoldering fire ring. He looked relieved when he saw my uniform. "You the ranger?" he asked. "Yes, sir. You reported something unusual?" He nodded rapidly. "Something was moving around my tent and I know this sounds crazy, but it was humming." "Humming?" "Yeah, low. Almost like someone trying to remember a tune. I thought it was my wife, but she's asleep. And then I realized it was circling us." I scanned the tree line. Nothing out of place. "Could have been wind resonating through branches," I offered. He shook his head violently. "No, it wasn't wind. It was too deliberate. Most hikers hear strange things their first night out. Anxiety does half the work for us." Still, the man looked genuinely afraid. "I'll check around," I said. "Keep your fire going tonight." When I stepped into the trees, the forest greeted me with its usual chorus of creaking limbs and settling branches. But then, just barely, I heard it. A low hum. Almost a vibration more than a sound. Faint, fading, coming from somewhere farther ahead. I tightened my grip on my flashlight, but didn't turn it on. The hum stopped. When I stepped closer, something snapped a twig behind me, quick and light. I spun, but there was nothing. No footprints, no disturbed brush, not even the usual rustle of a deer bounding away. Just stillness. My radio hissed. "Hall, status? All good," I lied. "Probably just wind resonance, nothing dangerous." "Copy." On my way back toward the campsite, I saw something on the ground. A small circle of stones, perfectly arranged, too perfect to be natural. Inside the ring was a single pine cone split cleanly in half. I knelt and lifted one stone. The underside was warm despite the air being cold enough that I could see my breath. That was when I heard the humming again. But this time, it was behind me. I turned slowly. Nothing moved. No figures, no animals, not even wind. Just that impossible hum fading like someone slipping behind a doorway. I returned to the campground and reassured the man, but my nerves stayed tight for the rest of the shift. When I finally got back to the station, Kincaid was waiting by the door, arms crossed. "You hear it?" he asked. I froze. "Hear what?" "That hum." I didn't answer. He sighed and motioned me inside. "Tomorrow we talk about the trails, the ones you don't walk after sunset. There's a reason the rules are strict. Something out there listens for us, something that tries to draw you off path." "What is it?" He gave me a grim smile that didn't match his eyes. "You'll learn. Everyone does. One way or another." He paused, studying me again with that searching look. "And if you're here because of what happened at Hollow Ridge, don't think she won't remember you." My throat closed. "Who?" He shook his head. "Not a who." He wouldn't say another word, but he didn't need to. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the humming, not because of the rules, but because I realized something I hadn't let myself think in years. Hollow Ridge wasn't done with me, and whatever hummed out there in the dark had recognized me long before I recognized it. I woke before sunrise, the sky still a deep navy that hadn't decided if it wanted to let morning in. My dreams had been shallow, fractured things, trees bending in directions they shouldn't, the hum weaving itself between branches like a living thread, and that old trail I swore I'd never see again. Hollow Ridge. Even in memory, it crawled under my skin. When I stepped outside, the cold slapped me awake. Frost clung to the railing despite it being June. Glacier Peak loves reminders. It wants you aware and preferably off balance. Kincaid was already at the truck, a thermos in his hand, steam winding into the half-light. "You're early," he said. "So are you." He gave a tight shrug. "Didn't sleep." Neither did I, but I wasn't about to say it first. "Today," he continued, "we check the restricted trails, just inspections. No walking them, no stepping past markers. You follow my lead, and if I say move, you move." "Understood." He studied me, eyes softer than yesterday, but still wary. "Hall, these aren't ghost stories. You've seen your share. You know mountains keep things. They don't give them up easy. I know." He nodded once, satisfied or resigned. I couldn't tell. We set off toward the high ridge roads, the truck rattling over dirt that still held patches of frozen mud. Sunlight pushed over the peaks in thin, hesitant streaks. Glacier Peak always looks peaceful from a distance, like nothing could survive here without permission. Our first stop was Lantern's Way. Not actually lit by lanterns, but sunlight hits the quartz in the rock walls just right, and the whole canyon glows at dawn. Gorgeous during the day, after dark. The binder listed it as strictly off limits. Kincaid parked well short of the trailhead. "Never get closer than this," he said. "We check from here, binoculars only." I scanned the trail. Everything looked normal. Switchbacks, shale runoff, pine needles thick as carpet. But the air above the trail shimmered faintly, as if heat rose from a camp stove. Except it was cold, and the shimmer didn't stop. It pulsed in a rhythm. "There," I said quietly. Kincaid raised his binoculars. "Yeah, she's close today." "She?" He didn't answer. He lowered the binoculars and pointed at the ridge. "That shimmer? Don't look too long. People who stare at it get vertigo, and worse if they keep staring." "What is it?" "A boundary," he said. "Trail crosses through her territory. She doesn't like us walking it." "You keep saying she, because calling it is asking for trouble." That was not reassuring. We logged trail conditions into the tablet. Erosion moderate, snowpack minimal, no visible obstructions. The shimmer made the hairs rise on the back of my neck, but I kept my eyes away from it like Kincaid said. The hum from last night didn't return, but something else did. A soft pressure in the air, like the mountain was leaning closer. "What about the others?" I asked as we returned to the truck. "The other restricted trails?" "You'll see." The next few were calmer. Broken Timber had a long-standing rule about never stepping past the collapsed log at trail marker 12, though the binder didn't say why. Upper Basin Loop required hourly check-ins if crossed after sunset, which basically meant don't cross it, but none of them had the same weight as Hollow Ridge. When we arrived at the pull-off, my breath caught. The trees here grew closer together than anywhere else I'd seen in the park, their trunks twisting inward as if sheltering something. Mist slid between them like something alive trying to stay unseen. Even the air here felt thick, like there was too much of it in my lungs. Kincaid stepped out slowly. "If you feel anything, tightness, pressure ringing in your ears, tell me." "Should I be worried?" "If you weren't, I'd be." The last time I stood here was 6 years ago. I had been younger, cockier, still full of ideas about how the wilderness could be mapped, cataloged, understood. That was before the night we lost Sophia. I swallowed hard. Why is this one still restricted? "It never stopped being restricted," Kincaid said. Budget cuts closed the upper section officially, but we never reopened the lower half either. After what happened to your team, he trailed off. She's still active, he finished. That word again. She. My legs felt heavier the closer I stepped to the trail marker. The wooden post, once painted a bright yellow, was now splintered and gray. Claw marks raked down its side, deep ones. Too wide for a cougar, too long for a bear. Something in between, or something not meant to fit any category. Those weren't here before, I said. They appear when she's restless, Kincaid said. And she's been restless a lot the past few months. What changed? He stared into the trees as though they might answer. Wish I knew. A faint breeze carried through the ravine, but the trees didn't sway. They stood rigid, stiff as pillars. Only the mist moved. As it curled along the ground, it coiled toward the trail, wound between rocks, and then, slowly, pulled back. Like a breath being drawn in. You feel that? Kincaid asked quietly. Yeah. That's her watching? My skin prickled, but not from fear, from recognition. I remembered the sound that chased us down the ridge that night. Something between breathing and dragging. Something too soft to be an animal, but too heavy to be human. I remembered Sophia screaming. I remembered the trees bending toward us, even though there was no wind. I remembered the hum, the same hum from last night. I forced myself back to the present. Why didn't they shut the whole area down after what happened? They tried, Kincaid said, but the park has boundaries. Funding, politics, tourists push back, so they settle for restrictions that don't make the brochures. We finished the inspection quickly, neither of us wanting to stay longer than necessary. As we turned back, I felt something tug at my attention, a pinpoint pull at the back of my mind, like someone calling my name from very far away. But no sound came, just the pull. I clenched my jaw. She remembers me. Kincaid didn't ask how I knew. Maybe he could feel it too. Instead, he placed one hand firmly on my shoulder. She remembers all of us, he said softly, but she remembers you more, and that's what worries me. The rest of the day passed in uneasy silence. We returned to the station, filled out reports, restocked supplies, and pretended not to notice the way shadows stretched wrong through the windows at dusk. Glacier Peak can sense attention. It reacts to it. So the best thing you can do sometimes is act ordinary, routine. But routine didn't survive the evening. Just as the sun dipped below the ridge, the radio crackled with a burst of static sharp enough to make us jump. Then a voice came through, small, trembling, almost swallowed by static. This is, please, someone. The signal distorted violently. Kincaid snapped to attention. Identify your location. No answer, just static. Then the voice returned, clearer this time, and unmistakably familiar to me. Hall, help me. My blood turned to ice. Kincaid grabbed the unit. Identify yourself. How do you know Ranger Hall? But I already knew. I hadn't heard her voice in 6 years. Not since the night she was taken. Not since Hollow Ridge. Not since Sophia. I stared at the radio like it might bite, like it might weep, like it might bring her back. Kincaid looked at me, pale. Hall, it isn't her. It can't be. But the voice came again. Hall, I'm cold. Why did you leave me? The words hit exactly where they were meant to. Kincaid slammed the radio off. That wasn't Sophia. You know that. My chest tightened. Then what was it? He swallowed. Her. The mountain's shadows deepened, and somewhere outside, beyond the reach of any human trail, something hummed a note I hadn't heard in years, a note that belonged to the dead, and to whatever had taken them. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I expected the radio to crackle again, expected Sophia's voice to slip through the static, expected that low hum to vibrate through the floorboards. I stayed dressed, boots on, jacket zipped, sitting at the edge of the bunk like a soldier waiting for orders that would never come. Around 3 a.m., Kincaid knocked on my door. Not loud, not urgent, just a quiet, steady knock to say he was awake too. "You good?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "Good means you still know what's real." He held out a mug of coffee. Strong, burnt, probably reheated twice. Ranger coffee. I took it anyway. "You heard it too," I said. He didn't deny it. "She mimics, copies voices like she's collecting them. She likes using the ones you don't want to hear again." "She didn't sound wrong," I said quietly. "She sounded like herself, like she did that night." "That's the point," Kincaid said. "She knows how to get you alone." I took a slow sip, letting the heat ground me. "Has she ever used someone else's voice? Another ranger?" "Yes." "Did they follow it?" Kincaid's silence was all the answer I needed. Morning came reluctantly. The sky looked bruised, the clouds low and heavy, despite the forecast promising clear skies for days. Mountains don't care about forecasts. They make their own weather, their own warnings. I spent the first half of my shift going through the lost equipment storage, checking the old radios, tightening straps on medpacks, and trying not to replay Sophia's voice in my head. It wasn't just the words that got me, it was the terror between them. She had sounded like she was freezing, like she was somewhere high up, somewhere air thinned, the same way she sounded the night she vanished. By noon, Kincaid called me to the main desk. A tourist couple had reported hearing distant screaming near the lower cliffs overlook. "Likely a fox," he said. "But given last night, I want you with me." We drove out. The trail to the overlook wound through dense pine, sunlight breaking through in narrow beams that looked like ropes tied to the sky. The couple who reported the noise waited nervously near their SUV. They didn't look like people who scared easily. Sunburnt hiking packs, steel water bottles covered in park stickers. But today they looked shaken. "It was coming from that direction," the woman said, pointing toward a steep descent coated in loose stones. "It sounded human." "Could it have been an animal?" I asked. She hesitated. "Maybe, but I don't know. It sounded like someone falling." Her husband added, "And then it stopped suddenly. Not like it faded, just ended." Kincaid exchanged a glance with me. "We'll check it out. Stay here." The descent was tricky, the kind where gravel slides under your boots no matter how careful you are. The air grew cooler the farther we went, and the smell changed. Less pine, more soil and moisture. Something about it felt wrong. Halfway down, I heard it. Not screaming, not humming, something in between. A long, low exhale carried on the wind, like someone blowing across the top of a glass bottle. It rose and fell in a steady rhythm, too controlled to be natural. My pulse quickened. "You hearing it?" I whispered. Kincaid nodded once. "Don't react. She responds to attention." We continued slowly until we reached the bottom of the ravine. The ground here was soft and dark, as though it had recently rained, though the rest of the mountain was bone dry. And then I saw them. Footprints. Human footprints. Bare. They led deeper into the trees, the stride uneven as though the person had been stumbling. But what made my stomach twist was their shape. Longer than normal, the toes oddly spaced, the arch too deep. Like someone had stretched the foot until it barely resembled something human. "She's been active," Kincaid muttered. "These aren't Sophia's," I said. "No." The footprints ended abruptly at a fallen log. Not faded, not washed out. They just stopped. Whatever made them had not walked away. Something had stepped up. Or stepped down. "Back up the ravine," Kincaid ordered quietly. We climbed in silence, but halfway up the trail, the wind shifted direction and carried something with it. A soft whisper, almost a hiss. "Haul." I froze. The whisper slid past my ear like a cold finger. "Don't!" Kincaid snapped. Keep moving. But the voice came again, closer this time. Why did you leave me? My throat tightened and my vision tunneled. The slope beneath us blurred. I heard my breathing quicken. Kincaid grabbed my jacket and yanked. Hall, don't listen. It's not her. The whisper faded, melting back into the wind. When we reached the overlook, the couple was gone. Their SUV still sat in the dirt lot, doors closed, keys still inside, a half-eaten sandwich on the dashboard, but no sign of either of them. Damn it, Kincaid muttered. We should have told them to come with us. He grabbed the radio. Station 1, we have 2 missing hikers from Lower Cliffs, Overlook. Dispatch a second team. Static answered. Then a faint voice. Not the woman, not her husband. A child's voice. They're with me. Kincaid swore under his breath, switched channels, and radioed again. This time, the line stayed dead. Glacier Peak was swallowing us signal by signal. We're heading back, he said. We regroup before we search. Search? I asked. We know what took them. That's why we regroup, he said. When we returned to the station, 2 other rangers, Dalka and Rennert, were already prepping gear. They'd heard enough through broken transmissions to know it was serious. Last known location? Rennert asked. Lower Cliffs, Kincaid said. But she's moving them. We saw footprints halfway down the ravine. Dalka frowned. Bare footprints? Kincaid nodded. Long ones. Both rangers stiffened. How long? Dalka asked quietly. Long enough? They didn't ask more. Glacier Peak has its own vocabulary. Long footprints means something that used to be human, or something that wants you to think it is. As we reviewed maps, I noticed something odd. A thin line of markings had been drawn along Hollow Ridge. Circles, crosses, small symbols I didn't recognize. They looked recently added. What are these? I asked. Kincaid hesitated. Boundary markers. For what? For where she moved last. She's expanding. Kincaid didn't answer. Dalka did. She always expands in early summer. But this year, she's been pushing hard. Territory's changing. We've lost 3 trails already. Lost? I asked. Meaning, Rennert said softly, we don't go there anymore, not even during the day. Kincaid pointed to a contour line on the map. We focus here. This ravine feeds into one of the lower forks of Hollow Ridge. If she's pulling people, she'll take them along the old watershed. And the voices? Dalka asked. Kincaid looked at me. She's using Hall. Dalka's eyes widened. She remembers him. She does, Kincaid said, and she knows he'll follow. Everyone turned to me then, not accusing, not resentful, but understanding something I hadn't admitted aloud. She wants you, Rennert said quietly. She called for you. I swallowed hard. I'm not giving her what she wants. Kincaid shook his head. You might not have a choice. We headed out in pairs, Dalka and Rennert taking the eastern fork, while Kincaid and I took the western approach, the one closest to the Hollow Ridge split. The air darkened, even though it was only late afternoon. Clouds thickened unnaturally, rolling over the peaks like someone dragging a curtain across the sky. Mist seeped into the ravine ahead of us, curling around rocks, swallowing shadows. And then the humming started, soft at first, gentle, familiar, then louder, closer. It vibrated through the ground, up my legs into my ribs. My heart began to match its rhythm, slow and heavy. Sophia's voice drifted between the hum. Hall, I'm waiting. Please. I stopped walking. The hum deepened until it felt like a hand at the base of my spine, pushing me forward. Kincaid grabbed my shoulder, fingers digging hard. Look at me, not the trail. I forced my eyes away. The humming rose another octave, a strange, layered sound like multiple voices trying to hum the same note, but failing to match pitch. Then, snap, a branch broke ahead of us. Something moved in the mist. Tall, thin, wrong, just out of sight. Kincaid raised his radio. "Dalka, Rennert, report." Static, then Dalka's voice, distorted. "We found something. You need to—" A shriek cut through the channel, followed by a crash, and a wet sound that made my stomach twist. "Dalka!" Kincaid shouted. Only static answered. The humming grew loud enough that I felt it in my teeth, and somewhere deep in the mist, a bare foot stepped into view, and another, too many, too long, too quiet, not walking toward us, waiting for us to come to her. Kincaid didn't move, and neither did I. The shapes in the mist stayed just beyond clarity. Tall, narrow silhouettes with too many angles, too many joints bending the wrong way, like something had tried to copy the idea of a person from memory, but forgot what real bodies looked like. They stood barefoot on the wet soil, their toes long and pale, sinking into the earth without resistance. None of them breathed. None shifted their weight. They were waiting. "For what?" I whispered. "For you to step closer," Kincaid said, voice tight. He lifted his walkie again. "Dalka, Rennert, answer if you can." Static swallowed the channel. Then, faintly, a voice, not either ranger, a whisper. "Hall." I felt the sound thread through my ribs, winding its way up my throat like it wanted to speak for me. Kincaid seized my arm before I could take a step. "Don't follow it." "She needs help," I said, the thought slipping out before I realized it wasn't mine. "No," he snapped. "She's dead. Whoever's calling isn't her." The silhouettes shifted then, not walking, not advancing, just tilting slightly like trees bending to a wind that didn't exist. Their heads, if they had heads, angled toward us. A hum rose in the air, low and layered, pulling the mist back like a curtain. Through that curtain I saw a single figure standing farther up the ravine. Not tall, not twisted, human, barefoot, shivering, hair plastered to her cheeks from the damp. "Sophia," I breathed. She looked exactly as she had the night she disappeared. Same jacket, same braid, same terrified eyes, but she shouldn't have been alive. She couldn't have been alive. "Hall, that's not her," Kincaid warned, but my heart didn't listen. Memory took over, her laugh echoing across the ridge, her steady hiking pace always a step ahead of mine, her voice yelling my name when the trail collapsed beneath us. "Sophia!" The figure blinked slowly, her lips parted. "Why did you leave me?" she whispered. The silhouettes behind her straightened sharply, their two long toes gripping the soil, their limbs twitching like reflexes they didn't own. The hum deepened, wrapping around her voice like a thread pulling a puppet upright. Kincaid stepped between us. "Hall, that's not Sophia. She's using your memory. Back away, now." But the image of Sophia stumbled forward, reaching a trembling hand toward me. "Help me, please. I don't want to be alone here." The forest around us went silent, too silent. Even the wind held its breath. Kincaid's hand tightened on my jacket. "Listen to me. If you answer her, she'll take your voice. If you step toward her, she'll take the rest." I tore my eyes away long enough to breathe. The moment I did, the figure flickered, like a reflection on disturbed water. Her edges rippled, her hair darkened, her fingers lengthened as she reached. Not Sophia. Something, wearing her memory like clothing. The silhouettes leaned forward as if eager for an answer. "Back up," Kincaid whispered. "Slow. Don't break eye contact." We retreated a single step. The figures twitched. Kincaid raised his free hand, palm outward. "Stay quiet. They react to sound." A branch snapped behind us. We froze. Very slowly, Kincaid turned his head. It wasn't an animal. It was Rennert, except he moved like something was holding his joints from the inside. His eyes were wide and glassy, his mouth open but no breath coming out. He stepped into view barefoot, jacket torn, his legs trembling with every uneven step. "Rennert?" I whispered before I could stop myself. His head jerked toward me, too fast, too sharp, as though controlled by strings. His jaw cracked loudly as it shifted, and when he spoke, it wasn't his voice. "She wants you, Hall," the thing inside him said. "She's been waiting," Kincaid swore under his breath. "Back to the ridge. Move." We climbed fast, sliding on the loose gravel, feeling the hum rise and fall around us like a heartbeat. Rennert, whatever was using him, followed jerkily, mimicking our pace without effort. The silhouettes in the mist didn't chase. They just watched, waiting, always waiting. At the top of the ravine, Kincaid grabbed my sleeve. "Don't look back. Don't give her the attention she wants." But I couldn't help it. Curiosity and dread twisted together and forced my head to turn. The Sophia figure stood at the base of the ravine, still reaching for me. Her eyes weren't eyes anymore, just dark pits filled with writhing threads of mist. And behind her, the silhouettes began to multiply, not appearing, splitting like shadows, unstitching themselves from the ground. We ran. By the time we reached the station clearing, my lungs burned and the sky had darkened to a premature twilight. The radios were still dead, the generator lights flickering as if something had passed over the building and drained what little energy it had left. Inside, Dalka lay on the floor, breathing but unconscious, her boots missing, her socks soaked with mud. Tiny punctures dotted her ankles. Too small for an animal, too uniform for a plant, like something had hooked into her and drained. Not blood, something else. "She's alive," Kincaid said, relieved. "She fought. That's good." I knelt beside her. Her lips moved faintly. "Hollow Ridge," she whispered. "She's moving. Toward Hollow Ridge." Kincaid's face paled. "She's shifting territory again." I swallowed hard. "Why?" He hesitated. Then, "Because you're here." I didn't want to believe that, didn't want to think I mattered enough for something like her to change direction. But the mountain had memory, and so did she. Dalka groaned, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't go," she rasped. "She wants. Her voice broke into a sob. "We know," Kincaid said gently. Rennert's condition was worse. He sat slumped against a filing cabinet, shivering violently. His eyes tracked us, but his pupils were blown wide, almost consuming the iris. "Can he hear us?" I asked. "Yes," Rennert whispered hoarsely. "But she hears you too." Then his voice shifted, deepened, warped. "She always hears you, Hall." Kincaid held up a talisman, one of the old carved stones rangers use here, etched with symbols older than the park itself. Rennert recoiled with a low hiss, pressing himself against the wall. His skin darkened along his veins like ink spreading through paper. Kincaid kept the stone raised until Rennert slumped, unconscious again. "That buys us time," he said. "Not much." "What do we do?" "We need to push her back. Force her out of the lower territories." "How?" Kincaid pointed to the map. His finger hovered over a narrow path etched between two ridge lines. "Hollow Ridge." My stomach dropped. "No," I said. "No, I'm not going back there." "You don't have a choice," Kincaid said. "She's using your guilt, your memory, your voice. She wants you. That means you're the only one she'll follow." "That's exactly the problem. That's exactly the point." Dalka stirred on the floor. Rennert twitched in his sleep. Outside, the wind began to hum, not whistle, not howl, hum, deep and resonant, the same pitch we'd heard in the ravine. "She's coming," I whispered. Kincaid grabbed his pack. "Then we move now, before she reaches the station." We headed into the darkening woods, the path lit only by the narrow beams of our flashlights. The humming grew louder, vibrating through the ground, the trees, even the air between us. As we climbed toward Hollow Ridge, I felt her pulling at me again, not like a voice, not like a whisper, but like gravity, like the mountain wanted me back. We reached the trailhead just as the last sliver of sun dipped behind the peaks. The sky turned black instantly, as if someone had snuffed out the light. Kincaid placed a hand on my shoulder. "Once we step on this trail," he said, "there's no turning back until she lets us." I nodded numbly. "And Hall?" "Yeah? If she shows you Sophia again, don't speak to her." I didn't respond, because I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. We stepped onto Hollow Ridge. The mountain exhaled, and the hum began all around us. The hum wrapped around us the moment our boots touched the trail. Not loud, not even threatening, just present, like the mountain was listening, like every step we took pressed deeper into something alive. The trees along Hollow Ridge were wrong. I didn't notice it when Sophia and I hiked here months ago, but now that I knew what lived on this mountain, I could see the signs clearly. Every trunk leaned slightly inward. Every branch curled toward the trail like they'd grown in the direction of whatever walked here at night. Kincaid walked ahead, scanning the darkness with slow, deliberate movements. "Stay close," he said. "She'll test you." "How?" "She'll show you things you want or things you fear. She always starts with what you miss most." Before I could answer, the hum changed pitch, higher, thinner, almost like singing. "I don't hear anything," I said. "Then it's meant for you." We moved deeper into the ridge. Mist pooled between the trees, low and moving in unnatural currents. The trail narrowed until we were walking single file, our shoulders brushing moss-covered rock. Every time my beam of light drifted off the path, I caught glimpses of figures too still to be human, too tall to be trees. They didn't advance, they just watched. "Why aren't they moving?" I whispered. "Because she hasn't decided who she wants yet." That didn't make me feel better. We reached the first switchback. My breath froze in my throat. Sophia stood at the corner of the trail, not flickering, not distorted, real. Her braid draped over her left shoulder, her jacket torn at the sleeve, her eyes glassy with exhaustion and relief. "Hall," she whispered, "you came back for me." Kincaid grabbed my arm instantly. "Don't look at her." But I couldn't stop. My flashlight trembled in my hand. "Sophia, I'm sorry." The moment the words left my mouth, the ground beneath her rippled like disturbed water. Her smile widened too far, stretching her cheeks. A long tear split down her face, revealing something pale beneath. Kincaid shoved me backward. "I said don't speak to her," the Sophia thing shrieked. The sound wasn't loud, but it vibrated inside my skull. Its face tore fully open like fabric ripping, and dozens of thin white threads spilled out, whipping through the mist, reaching for my legs. "Move," Kincaid yelled. We sprinted up the trail as the threads lashed at the earth where we'd just stood. They didn't chase far, only to the edge of the switchback, then snapped back into the collapsing figure. Behind us, something laughed. "Not Sophia, not human." "That was your first test," Kincaid said breathlessly. "You only get harder ones from here on." My chest tightened. "How many tests are there?" "As many as she needs to break you." The trail steepened. The mist thickened. The hum rose until it buzzed inside my bones. The higher we climbed, the louder it became, like the mountain was drawing us toward its heart. We reached a fallen tree, bridging a narrow gap. Kincaid crossed carefully, steadying himself with a hand pressed to the bark. When I stepped onto the log, something moved beneath us. Not the log, the forest. Branches twisted toward me, crossing and uncrossing like fingers. Something whispered my name beneath the roots. "Hall, come down here." A pale hand reached from the hollow below the log. Not human, not close. Its fingers were 3 times longer than any person's should be. They scraped the wood gently, affectionately. "Come back," it said in Sophia's voice. "You left me here alone." I squeezed my eyes shut and forced myself across. When my boots hit solid ground on the other side, the hand slipped back into the hollow with a satisfied sigh. Kincaid didn't speak. He just nodded grimly, and kept walking. After another half-mile, the ridge opened to a clearing, a place I recognized instantly. We'd camped here. The night before Sophia disappeared, I could still see our tent's impression in the flattened grass, preserved like the mountain had been saving it. My stomach twisted. She left the tent for a bathroom break. She never came back. Now the clearing felt staged, like the mountain had frozen the moment in time, waiting to use it against me. "She likes this spot," Kincaid said softly. "Likes the memories, makes people weaker." I stepped forward without thinking. A soft voice echoed behind me. "Halt." Not ahead, behind. I turned. Sophia stood at the trail entrance, but this version wasn't smiling. She looked terrified, bruised, alive. "Help me," she whispered. "Please, it hurts." Her form jerked violently. Her head twitched. Something behind her spine shifted, like hands pushing inside her skin. Kincaid stepped between us. "That's not her." Her mouth opened too wide, her jaw unhinged, unrolling into a long vertical slit, while her eyes remained desperate and human-looking. The contradiction made bile rise in my throat. Kincaid didn't hesitate. He lifted a carved talisman and held it toward her. The thing wearing Sophia's shape convulsed, its arms stretching backward into jagged angles before it collapsed into itself and evaporated into the mist. Kincaid lowered the talisman. "She's getting impatient." "Then why keep testing me? Why not just come herself?" "She's not whole, not yet. She needs you to finish what she started." That chilled me more than anything else. "What did I start?" Kincaid looked at me with something like pity. "You answered her. The night Sophia disappeared, you spoke her name. That gives her a thread, a connection. She's been pulling on it ever since." My throat tightened. The hum shifted again, lower now, almost a growl. Kincaid stopped walking. "That's new." A cold wind rolled down the ridge, pushing the mist aside. The first time, we saw the mountain clearly, and what stood on it. Silhouettes, hundreds, lining the ridge like gravestones, all waiting, all facing us. "She's close," Kincaid whispered. A figure stepped forward from their ranks. Not tall, not twisted, human-shaped, but hollow. Her chest was an open cavity filled with drifting threads of white mist. Her face flickered between versions. Sophia's, my mother's, childhood friends, strangers I'd passed on the trail years ago. She was selecting a face, trying them on. Finally, she settled on one, mine. My own face stared back at me, smiling gently like a mirror that had learned to lie. "Hello," it said with my voice. "You look tired." I stumbled back as nausea twisted my gut. "Don't engage," Kincaid hissed. But the thing kept speaking, each word perfect, each inflection familiar. "You left her, Hall. You let her walk into the dark alone. You know what she saw last. You know why she screamed." Sophia's scream echoed through the clearing. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound vibrated through my bones anyway. Kincaid shouted over it, "Stay with me. Do not answer her." But the thing wearing my face tilted its head. "You owe her," it whispered, "and you owe me. Come closer. Come finish what you started." The hum rose into a deafening crescendo. Kincaid grabbed my jacket and pulled me backward. "Run!" We sprinted through the clearing as the forest erupted behind us, figures exploding from the mist, threads whipping through the trees, the thing wearing my face gliding forward with impossible speed. The ground shook as if something massive beneath it was shifting, awakening. Branches lashed the trail, mist swallowed our legs, the hum became a roar. I fell. Kincaid hauled me up without stopping. "The ridgeline, go!" We burst through the last wall of trees onto the overlook, Hollow Ridge's highest point. The wind howled across the cliffs, spraying cold air against our faces. Kincaid shoved a talisman into my hand. "She wants you, so give her you." "I don't understand." "Say your name." "What?" "It's the counter thread." You gave her a memory when you said Sophia's name. Take it back by giving your own." The forest behind us tore open like fabric. The thing wearing my face emerged, its body unraveling into long strands of mist and bone. It reached up, stretching toward my throat, eager, hungry. Kincaid gripped my shoulders. "Say it!" The wind ripped the breath from my lungs. The hum shook my ribs. The creature towered over us, its many faces flickering, all begging me to come closer, to apologize, to surrender. My voice broke free. "My name is Evan Hall." The forest went silent. The creature froze, threads snapping midair like cut strings. I shouted again, louder. "My name is Evan Hall." The talisman in my hand ignited with pale light. The ground beneath us vibrated. The creature shrieked, not with fury, but with loss. Its body convulsed, tearing apart at the seams. "You gave me yourself," it gurgled. "You promised." "I promised nothing," I said. "You owe me." "I don't owe you anything." Kincaid raised his talisman and slammed it into the earth. The ridge erupted with light, blinding, cracking through the mist like lightning. The creature writhed, its stolen faces peeling away, revealing a hollow interior filled with twisting shadows. One by one, its limbs dissolved into dust. Its torso collapsed like wet paper. Its last remaining face, Sophia's, stared at me with something like sorrow. "Hall?" Then it vanished. The silhouettes watching from the ridge evaporated. The mist peeled back. The hum died instantly. Silence fell, pure and heavy. Kincaid lowered his talisman, breathing hard. "It's done." I collapsed to my knees. "Is she gone?" I whispered. "Really gone?" "For now," he said. "But the mountain remembers everything, and so will you." We descended Hollow Ridge in silence. By the time we reached the station, the radios flickered back to life. Dalka had regained consciousness. Rennert no longer twitched in his sleep. But the forest was changed, quieter, watching. Later, as dawn touched the peaks, I stood alone outside the station. I thought of Sophia, the real Sophia, what she must have seen, what she must have felt. I whispered her name, not to call her, not to summon anything, just to say goodbye. The mountain didn't answer, but for the first time since she vanished, I didn't feel her pulling at me. Kincaid stepped beside me. "You did more than survive," he said. "You faced her. Most never get that chance." "Will she come back?" He shrugged. "Everything on this mountain comes back eventually. But if she does, we'll be ready." I wasn't sure I believed that, but I believed one thing. Hollow Ridge wasn't finished with me, and I wasn't finished with it. Not until every trail was clean, not until every whisper was answered, not until I finally understood what really happened the night Sophia disappeared. Because surviving the mountain once doesn't mean you're free. It means you've been noticed, and the mountain never forgets the people it notices.